Back home now, where 500 million rand has been allocated to food relief in the country as the devastating effects of the coronavirus and the associated lockdown to slow down the spread continue to impact on jobs and food security. Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape have the lion's share of funding for food relief, a sad indication of the desperate need faced by communities in the provinces. Our SABC News senior journalist Nozintombi Miya takes a closer look at the issue of food security and is at one of the largest food banks in the province. We cross live to her. Thank you very much, Nozintombi, for joining us. Of course, we know that the socio-economic impacts of the coronavirus have been devastating and people really being on the breadline. But just tell us about where you are and the work that's been done there.
Thank you so much, Nompu. We spent the better part of the morning at one of the 5 food banks in and around the Gauteng province. And, this forms part of our special focus on the issue of food security, looking specifically at what the Department of Social Development is doing in there. They allowed us to go into one of their food banks in the Tshwane area to really get a better look at how the food packs are collected, they're stored, they're sorted, and what the distribution criteria has been around that. And now we're currently at the headquarters to speak to the DDG of Community Development, that's Social Development, just to give us more insight about not just a view of the food banks themselves, but also the numbers and figures. Nompu, and he joins me now. Thank you so much, sir. If you could just introduce yourself, your name and your surname, so that we can then continue.
Thank you very much. My name is Pitane Chipare. I'm the DDG for Social Development, responsible for community development in the Department of Social Development.
Brother Peter, we were at one of the food banks a little bit earlier, and we saw all the hard work that has been put into the storing and collection and distribution of those particular food packs. How important has it been for the Department of Social Development to ensure that those food packs go to the people who need it the most?
Thank you very much. The food security in the country is very important, and you realize that in this country we have a lot of poverty, unemployment, and I think with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, it has exacerbated the challenge of food security and malnutrition, and especially hunger. So one of this approach that we have come up was to use our existing food and nutrition security program to assist people. It is very important, and you have seen how food comes in, how food are sorted out. The approach started a long time ago, where we have got 235 such food banks in the whole of South Africa. This is one of the examples in Gauteng, where during COVID we decided to have the food banks where all vulnerable and poor people will call, they will be assessed, and they will be provided with food appropriately. We have got, so far to date, we have distributed over 8.2 million people with food in the whole of the country. Gauteng is the highest, over 3 million people obtain their food from Gauteng. In November, our budget was about 256 million. In November, we were given extra 500 million from Treasury, which Gauteng got 104 million to make it about 256 million for Gauteng. And their whole approach is that we need to provide individuals that are poor, even those that have been rendered poor due to unemployment, due to COVID lockdown, with food. And these food are provided once per month, with those food parcels, and especially it feeds a family of 5. If they are above 5, they can request more in terms of what we are doing. We have seen a lot of these food parcels that have been given, and it has assisted a lot of families to move out of hunger. We've also seen that even before COVID, we were over 13.8 million people were living in hunger in South Africa. That's why we created a program called Household Food and Nutrition Program The approach is that we created 235 CNDCs. People usually used to go and eat there, but with COVID, we package food that they come and take out of that. And it's assisting each and every individual that needs food in the country. And it's one of the best programs that we have in this country.
Dr. Peter, over 8 million people that you've assisted specifically during this period of COVID and the lockdown and the added need of that. How are you able to decide which households are achieving these food parcels, and who are you getting donations from as well? How can NGOs and other interested parties ensure they also get involved?
In terms of who needs food, in Gauteng, they use a model where households are profiled. Others do call and say, I don't have enough, I don't have food. They are assessed by social workers, and the food are distributed to them. We're also working with a lot of NGOs. One of them is Solidarity Fund. During the COVID, we received around 66 million rands of money to procure food. Some comes from Old Mutual, some were coming from the SPA group, some were from the Solidarity Fund. There's a Church of Christ, Lategan. They also provided a lot of food for us. And we work with all other bigger NGOs that we are aware of. They assist us. Some bring food, some work with us to distribute food to the needy communities. The challenge that we have is that during COVID, a lot of people could not do piece jobs. They could not come and work in the gardens. They become our target, as we are responsible to care for the vulnerable and the poor of the poorest.
Dr. Peter, you're doing such an amazing job with providing food to those who need it, especially during this time. But how do you ensure that the food packs are delivered to those who need it the most? We have seen some instances of some local councillors and NGOs being accused of taking those food packs for themselves and not going to where they need to. How do you make sure that that particular process goes accordingly, and that those who are found to be misusing the food packs are held accountable and there's punitive measures put in place?
All the individuals that have been profiled and have been selected and assessed and found to be in need of food, when they are provided with food, they sign on a monitoring tool, which is a paper-based. And in other areas, they will not be able to carry them because they're big. So what they do is we deliver them, and we always have the NDA appointed what we call volunteers, as the DSD volunteers. That goes and check whether the food are not sold, whether the food are not misused. And we don't use any political structures or organization for that. That's what government services are rendered. We monitor and ensure that people get the food. The need is so huge, we still haven't touched some of the areas that people are getting poorer and poorer by day, especially during the lockdown period.
Dr. Peter, you've spoken about Gauteng receiving the largest share of this additional 500 million that you've received over and above the 200 million that you received last year. But which other provinces are also provinces that have really seen a spike in the need for food parcels? And what does that tell you?
During the first lockdown, the first 21 days last year, March, we have seen all 9 provinces had a spike. Everyone was in need of food. And each and every province were distributing food. The highest number of food that were provided were between April and July. We had a lot, all other provinces were distributing the food. Each and every province received an amount of money. The list were Northern Cape with 13 million of the 500 million that were allocated. That indicated for us that in this country, remember I said to you, we had a challenge in the country of unemployment, poverty, hunger, and malnutrition in some. This COVID exacerbated the situation, that even hunger and malnutrition becomes more, and it has already exacerbated the situation in such a way that we had to use even the churches and other NGOs to deliver. During June last year, we had to work with Solidarity Fund and use other NPOs because the need was so huge that we could not provide food to everyone who need the food in time.
Thank you so much, Ntate Peter, the DDG of Community Development here at the Department of Social Services, giving us a national perspective, Nompu, of the sheer need of food for people in and around the country. And, you know, quite eloquently, he told us that they've seen a spike since the first lockdown. And the food parcels that do get delivered service more than 8 million people. Nompu, talking to the issue about the growing hunger problem and food insecurity that a lot of our poor and indigent in the country are facing. Nompu.
Thanks very much, Nozintombi, for that very extensive interview. We're going to go for a quick break and have more news for you thereafter.